We've got the first speech from the Prime Minister-elect of Canada, who's also the current Prime Minister of Canada, Mark Carney. And I wanted to check it out because, my God, it was themed very much like a breakup with the United States. It themed like a breakup with the United States. It felt like the tearing off of a painful Band-Aid that nobody wanted to tear off, but the situation calls for it. And I haven't really seen this type of rhetoric from a Canadian leader ever. I mean, even on the campaign trail, there was some pretty aggressive commentary from Doug Ford. There was some pretty aggressive commentary from, of course, Mark Carney, Justin Trudeau. They were taking a more aggressive stance towards Trump in comparison to the Conservatives and Poilievre, who was the leader of the party, who is losing his seat. By the way, it looks like he's going to lose his seat. So when we say that the Liberals won this election, they won it based off of an anti-Trump wave. They won it off of an anti-America wave, not in the idea, oh, screw American burgers and screw your values, we hate freedom of speech, but against this Merkelantist, we're going to charge you all these gigantic tariffs after so much economic integration. Trump's talking openly and adamantly, and he says he means it, about the annexation of Canada, even if it's just a negotiating tactic. You tell any people that their national sovereignty does not matter, you will conquer them, they're not going to take that kindly. And so you tell the Canadians, hey, we're going to conquer you, we're going to tariff you, we're going to charge you more, you don't make anything we need, which is how the U.S. president called it, which is not really true. There's auto parts, there's timber, there's all sorts of stuff that we get from Canada, okay? It's not just maple syrup and like beavers up there. There is legitimate industry and a lot of natural resources. And if there's anything a country should do when it comes to its backyard, is try to use the geography and its neighbors to its advantage. Economic integration, trying to use the geography, the natural gifts given to you by God, mountains, rivers, and you know, the land masses you have, to your nation's advantage. And we've decided that's stupid. Tariff everything, including our neighbors, including our friends, including not the Russians, but we got to tariff the Canadians. And so this wave of anti-Trumpism caused by this put the Liberals from dead in the water. And when I say dead in the water, I mean Justin Trudeau had cement shoes at the bottom of the river, and he's 2 gulps away from being a fish forever. Okay, when we say they were down, I don't mean, oh, they're down 5 points, oh, they're down 6. I mean, they're down double digits, not in the teens. They're down to the point where, you know, I saw people going on those like political betting markets, putting money on the Conservatives to win, and they thought it was a sure bet for their return. Now, not only have the Conservatives lost with the message of Canada first, what an inconvenient message during a wave of anti-Trumpism. Now, I don't want to oversimplify and say that was only Trump, so I can just use this for my own partisan reasons. There's a few other things the Liberals did. I'll name one in specifics. The Conservatives had this one big pitch that Poilievre kept making, which is get rid of the carbon tax. Get rid of the carbon tax. It's destroying our industry. It's going to help our country. We need to stop taxing Canadians to death. And then Mark Carney, this, to be frank, neoliberal-esque banker who's worked in a lot of very powerful financial institutions in the West, he then goes out there, now that he's the new candidate for now that he's the prime minister, Justin Trudeau's out. That was Trudeau's policy. So he says, I want to get rid of the carbon tax. Now, whether or not you agree with that really undermined the campaign message of the Conservatives, who were running a lot on that, and it was like a big part of their campaign. And now that it's gone, and you got the wave of anti-Trumpism, it was difficult for the Conservatives, to the point that their leader's losing their seat. So it wasn't just that they lost, their leader lost their seat. That's quite significant. That's quite significant when you go from, oh, this is going to be a conservative wave, to now this is the longest period of single-party rule in Canada in over 60 years. Now, the aftermath has come. Now, it's good politics on the campaign trail to Trump bash. It's good politics to say you're going to fight back against the tariffs. But now that Mark Carney's won, this banker, this man of the economy, what is he going to do? Is he going to shift his stance and say, well, look, we got to be friendly. We got to do our best. We want to avoid X, Y, and Z. Look, he says he wants to negotiate, but from the way he talks here, he's talking about Canada's relationship with the United States being irrevocably changed by the Trump administration. I don't know if he really means it or if it's his version of being tough on language, knowing that maybe in 4 years things will change. Who knows? But he has to deal with the now. And I mean, I'll let the man speak for himself because I've never seen a Canadian prime minister and the continued prime minister of Canada. He's going to be in charge for a while now. I've never seen them talk like this about the United States. Listen to this.
Been warning for months. America wants our land, our resources, our water, our country. Never. But these are not idle threats. President Trump is trying to break us so that America can own us. That will never ever happen. We are once again at one of those hinge moments of history. Our old relationship with the United States, a relationship based on steadily increasing integration, is over. The system of open global trade anchored by the United States, a system that Canada has relied on since the Second World War, a system that, while not perfect, has helped deliver prosperity for a country for decades, is over. These are tragedies, but it's also our new reality. We are over the shock of the American betrayal, but we should never forget the lessons.
But you're going to take us forward.
We have to look out for ourselves. And above all, we have to take care of each other.
Yeah.
And my message to every Canadian is this: no matter where you live, no matter what language you speak, no matter how you voted, I will always do my best to represent everyone who calls Canada home.
Now, if you were to go on and to listen to more of his rhetoric, because we're not going to watch the whole speech, obviously, he talks about the sacrifices that Canadians will have to make in the incoming trade war. He talks about a period that might be difficult for Canadians, but is necessary for the defense of their national sovereignty and of their economy and their long-term economic health and the future of the relationship in North America with its most influential neighbor. This is not how anybody alive has listened to a Canadian prime minister speak about the United States. Can you realize that your grandparents never heard this? Your father never heard this. Your mother never heard this. Your great-grandparents never heard this. There is no living American that has ever listened to a Canadian prime minister speak this way about the United States, that further integration is done, that the United States wants to take our land, wants to take our resources, wants to basically conquer us, conquer our land, conquer our resources, conquer our people. And so therefore, our further integration, it is over. The post-World War II standard where the United States stopped fearing an invasion of the United States by Great Britain through Canada again, which we had real war plans for, by the way. Go look it up. It's very interesting history. Nobody has lived through this in the United States. We are. These are historical times. These are revolutionary times. And these are scary times for America and its alliances. But is this rhetoric too much? Is this rhetoric him going over the line, thinking, my gosh, they want to conquer us, they want to do this, they want to do that, it's adversarial, this relationship's over. It's not a pause. Trump isn't a break in some way. I mean, he's not saying this explicitly, but I feel like a lot of it would be implied. This is over, is how he said. It's not, this is in peril, or for now, that is dead, and, maybe it'll be revived. He just said it was over. He didn't leave any room up for interpretation on the idea that the next Democrat president, but I'm sure if a President Gavin Newsom or AOC or whoever, the Democrats decide to throw into the ring in 4 years, Biden again, because they just want to see what that debate would look like, just out of curiosity, I don't know. Whatever they choose, even if a Democrat wins, I think there is this, even if this is somewhat rhetoric in order to pressure the United States to show reliance, to diligence, and we're going to stay on this position and we're going to negotiate with strength, I think there is also an underlying current of a lack of trust of America, period, now. To think that the United States would, where a lot of people thought that Trump was a break, The way Joe Biden talked about his election was a return to political normalcy in some way, away from this break with the American system, the break of dedication to the republic. Oh my gosh, look at the horrors of J6. We're going to move on as a country. That has been shown not to be the case because Trump is back. Now, of course, the circumstances on which Biden withdrew from the race and the unprecedented last second, like Harris tap in and different decisions made on the campaign trail by her, as well as, you know, the lack of appreciation for the status quo. There's a lot of things that contributed to it. But the fact of the matter is that a plurality of the United States citizenry decided that Donald Trump should be president again. Now, Trump says it's by a landslide, and a lot of people believe him. It's not necessarily the case. We're talking about like a 1% difference in vote total, 200,000 votes deciding the election in key swing states across the country. And now we can see Trump in certain pollings down in the 30s, according to AP. You know, a mandate, I don't know. Certainly not a mandate to do a lot of what he's done. But the fact of the matter is that was the decision made by a plurality of the American people. The American people had the chance to choose differently, and they did not. And so from the perspective of the Canadians, okay, Trump's gone in 4 years. Let's say this third term Trump thing, you know, falls apart because there's not really a constitutional pathway for it. And Trump doesn't find a way to just avoid the courts and do it anyway. And he's gone. And even if a Democrat wins in 4 years, what happens when the election in 2032 comes around and then you've got President J.D. Vance and then he reinstitutes it? Do you want this drastic of a change between parties in foreign policy where agreements you make with the United States 4 years ago will no longer be valid depending upon one election, and it happens again and again and again? And think about the standards they could even think to come up with to deal with the huge gulf in foreign policy viewpoints between the Democrats and Republicans. They could try to find some ways to, like, okay, how do we deal with these 4 years and reintegrate? But this saps investor confidence. Who is going to want to invest in a Canadian auto manufacturing plant, even after Trump, you know, leaves office, Democrats back there, remove all the tariffs, if there is an underlying fear that in 4 years, upon a different president getting elected, President J.D. Vance, I don't know, man, President Tucker Carlson, who knows, right? That under those circumstances, that it won't immediately be undone again. And then all of that integration that they've worked to repair will then be damaged again. All that investment, damaged. For example, there was like a $4.5 billion bridge between the United States and Canada that Canada largely financed because it would assist them in getting trade quicker to the United States. And through decades of time, that $4.5 billion investment would be recuperated in the Canadian economy through the trade of timber and other things over the bridge, streamlining trade. The United States let Canada build it because, you know, there was some economic indications that it would be more beneficial for them, but it'll also be beneficial for us. The streamlining of trade, making trade more efficient, easier, faster, cheaper. These are all things that bring down prices. The thing that Donald Trump promised to do, well, are you going to build those bridges if you're not going to have anything to move across the bridge? Are you going to build railways if you got nothing to put in the train? Or what you do put in the trade is going to be tariffed at a 25, 30, 35, 40. Who knows? Especially with Mark Carney taking this type of a stance. Who knows? It's certainly not the stance of we will give you what you want if you bring the tariffs back down. Not to mention the fact that while Trump talks about the idea of bringing some of these tariffs off and he continues to walk back certain auto tariffs and other tariffs on certain auto parts because of how it's affecting American manufacturing companies due to the negative outcome. But when he talks about removing tariffs, it's not like, oh, this is what we're going to do. It's maybe we'll remove them, maybe not, giving wiggle room for negotiations. But again, if you're an investor looking to put money anywhere, that tells you don't invest in anything that is centric on Canadian-U.S. trade, whether it be, infrastructure between the two nations or any other amount of traded goods. So I understand where Mark Carney's coming from. And even if, we do get back on the track in 4 years with somebody who's going to want that integration, there will always be the fear of it falling apart again once you get another isolationist populist who is going to blame the foreigner for the economic ills of the American. And instead of pointing out valid trade concerns, they're going to say that Vietnam has a 90% tariff rate on the United States when the real tariff rate is 1.1%. I mean, or we're going to tariff the penguin, or just a lack of, God, man. This is, I gotta say, this is not a good time for bald eagle, bull moose relations. I wanted to show some clips of Donald Trump talking about Canada because sometimes when I speak with conservatives online, they think of this almost as, it's just all negotiating. Don't worry about it. Worry about it. It's all negotiating. I mean, the Canadians, you know, how seriously can we really take them? I mean, it's negotiating. It's negotiating. Just think about a Canadian prime minister or a Chinese leader or a Russian czar or a French leader, any leader in the world, Brazilian, it doesn't matter. Think about any of those countries talking about the United States like this, and think about how that would affect Americans' view of them and the American government's view of them.
And we can't let them take advantage of the U.S. What I'd like to see, Canada become our 51st state. Canada only works as a state. It doesn't. We don't need anything they have. If you look at a map, they drew an artificial line right through it between Canada and the U.S. If we make it in the United States, we don't need it to be made in Canada. We'll have the jobs. That's why Canada should be our 51st state. So when I say they should be a state, I mean that. I really mean that, because we can't be
subscription.
Listen to this. I mean that. How are they supposed? Oh, it's a joke. Oh, it's negotiating. If you're a Canadian and you care about the future of your country, you care about having sovereignty, you want your own country to be its own thing, which is the desire of the vast majority of Canadians, as this election has clearly shown by the Liberals' gigantic turnaround. When a U.S. president says this, while also having the largest country in the world, not the largest country, the most well-funded armed forces in the world, the most powerful armed force in the world, with the most powerful economy in the world.
Morally corrupt, bankrupt man.
That is true. I am that. How are you supposed to take this unseriously? How can you take this unseriously and still be treating your country responsibly? Look, I'm not saying it's a one-to-one comparison, but you listen to Trump's rhetoric about artificial lines, and it would be naturally part of the United States. And really, it's coming here to liberate the Canadians. And, you know, we're coming, he doesn't use the word liberate, but he talks about like this would help them. This would be great for them. They don't want it. But he's talking about it as if he's bringing some great glory to them. For example, the same way to talk about Greenland is this way, you know, coming here and, you know, something that the people there could desire. The people of Greenland would love it, et cetera, et cetera. People needing liberation that don't need liberation. And so if you're the Canadians and realistically the odds of the United States invading you is not particularly high, but the odds of the United States trying to economically coerce you, well, I mean, that's happening right now. That's certain. That's 100%. And so you have to control for externalities. You want to be prepared. You want to avoid that situation from coming around to begin with. And so the Canadian people picked the guy that was the strongest against Trump and the strongest in his position to being willing to stand up to the United States, which is Canada's largest trading partner. Now, obviously, if Trump decides to escalate this trade war with Canada, it is going to have negative economic consequences. And those consequences will probably be more acutely felt on the Canadian side of the border than on the American side of the border. That doesn't mean we're not going to have negative economic consequences, okay? I do want to throw that out there. Just because it might be more painful for them, they're in the midst of a rally around the flag effect. Not just them, the Chinese too, and many of the people we're tariffing. We're not having that effect right now. That effect is in the MAGA base, but the rest of the American public did not necessarily sign up for this sort of a trade war, especially when they were told that they were going to be bringing down the prices on day one. And so when you want to, for example, deal with America's housing crisis by build, baby, build, having goods like timber tariffed is going to increase the price of housing. And this goes to other industries as well, like we were talking about car parts earlier. Hell, there was some people who've already had their jobs suspended, already been taken off the factory line because of these tariffs and the fact that, you know, it's just not as cost effective to build anymore because the parts they have to import increase the prices so much that they just don't think the consumers are going to bite. And that's why O'Reilly's Auto Parts right now, their stock is going up, is because the market is making the bet that Americans are going to repair their car instead of buying their car. So this is going to have negative economic effects on the United States as well. And for what? I mean, oh, we hurt them more? Congratulations. You damaged yourself to hit somebody else. At what benefit for you? At what benefit for the American consumer? What benefit to the American people? And so due to the lack of logic in relation to either benefiting the Americans or the lack of logic when it comes to how the tariffs were implemented, or the fact that Trump has been reelected again after many have talked about him being like an aspersion, it's just a moment in our democracy, leads to the Canadians digging in their trench, digging in their heels, gritting their teeth, and preparing for the worst from an adversarial negotiating position with the United States, which is not something I thought I was going to be talking about during my lifetime. Mind you, I understand that Trump's policy about bringing manufacturing back to the United States, but due to how this whole thing has been rolled out, even if that was your goal, even if that was the objective, due to the fact of how it's been rolled out so chaotically with oh, maybe we'll keep the tariffs in place, maybe we won't, has led to certain investors feeling unconfident and not wanting to put their money down in the manufacturing market because, hey, why would you invest in an American factory under the protection of a tariff bubble if that tariff bubble could be removed within 3 weeks due to negotiations or 3.5 years when another election happens? This is not the way to benefit the American consumer. This is not the way to deliver on Trump's promises. This is also not the way to even engage in trade wars. I don't think trade wars are good. I don't think a trade war is a good idea. That's not to say that there's never an instance where you can engage in a trade war if some country is really doing something to us horrible, really, screwing the American people, then yeah, you can engage in that. But I don't think that Penguin Island engaged in that type of behavior. I don't think Vietnam engaged in that type of behavior. And I haven't seen any justification put forward by the Trump administration for a large swath of countries to be tariffed in this way. And by doing it in this way, you're abandoning one of America's key strengths, which is what made Canada feel safe: alliances. We control about 13% of China's export goes to the United States. That's substantive for an economy. 13% of your exports, that drops off. That's going to mean a pretty big drop in GDP, okay? That's not good. But it used to be higher, used to be 20%. Trump's tariffs the first time around lowered it down to 13. I don't think it's just that. It's also China trading with other people, but it was certainly one of the contributing factors. And 13% is powerful. It will have an effect, but it's also just 13%. Where if you were to gather all of America's allies, all of the people who are part of our sphere of influence, if that's how we want to use the terminology, we're talking about 65% of China's trade goes to these countries. 65%. Think about the difference in negotiating power and strength there. Now, maybe you don't get every single one of those countries to sign on because due to their economic troubles, they don't want to even engage in the possibility of a trade war, sapping investor confidence, sapping consumer confidence, and hurting their relationship with the Chinese. But if you can get us up to 30, that's more than double than 13. So even if you believe that we had to engage in a trade war, is declaring a war on 60 fronts the way to go? Each country is getting a choice of whether they're going to dig in the trench and fight or not. The Japanese might concede in order to try to help their economy, but the Canadians don't seem to be in that mood. And so maybe you won't be fighting a 60-front war. Maybe you'll be fighting a 10-front, 5-front, 12-front, 13-front. But that's still too many, especially when those fronts are also the allies you would have expected to be in your corner during these fights. And that when people did economic planning about like a break between the West and China, that people tried to account for. There's a reason why the Chinese, despite Donald Trump's statements, oh, we have high-profile talks with the Chinese, they keep saying, no, we're not. We don't have these talks.
I am not spending 40 M to move a plant to America if I know that policy is going to vanish in 3 years. The end goal of this project literally puts us in the position of making cheap t-shirts for China.
Thank you for the Thank you for the 10 gifted and the
Love
$50.
you, bud, even if I'm not around often.
Hey, short stack goblin. My goodness, you've caused a lot of trouble, by the way, short stack goblins for some streamers. Thank you very much for the donation. I appreciate that. Thank you. Look, for the next 3.5 years, the Canadian Prime Minister has been politically rewarded from the death of their party politically. When I say death, I don't mean they're going to be gone, but the idea that they're going to be pushed out of power and give a conservative supermajority. That's how people saw the election going. Trump goes in there, starts all this stuff, and he delivers. The Liberals deliver a big victory to the point where the Conservative Party leader lost his seat. If you are in the Canadian Liberal Party, at that point, Rallying around the flag is good politics. And can we really bet on the idea that the Canadians won't choose good politics and that they won't control for the externalities of these deals being broken up all over again? Just look at NAFTA Plus. Trump renegotiated NAFTA. He said NAFTA was bad. It was associated with Hillary Clinton. It gave away all of our manufacturing jobs. It sent all of our jobs overseas, or in this case, not overseas, north and south. And it was not good for the United States because you could see it was part of this largely decreasing trend in American manufacturing. Now, is this reductive? Is this simplistic? Of course. But there was large swaths of the country in places like, Dayton, Ohio, that are going to listen to this message and is going to be very sympathetic to those in the Rust Belt. It's going to be very sympathetic. And so he ran on that, and then he got in office, and he said he was going to renegotiate NAFTA. And so he renegotiates NAFTA and calls it NAFTA Plus. And there's a few alterations, but it's largely the same trade agreement with a few minor alterations. Now, after those alterations are made and this new deal is signed, everything's peachy keen. Fantastic. Now we have a deal that Trump can put his name to, and so he can call it an accomplishment. And if there's anything Trump likes, is picking up a piece of paper and going, "Wee, look, I did this. Yeah, woo, I'm there. Oh, ha, ha." So giving him that opportunity should be the end of story. Then Trump gets reelected, and he starts talking about NAFTA Plus, and he says, this is a terrible trade deal. This is a horrible trade deal. Who negotiated this? Talking about the person who negotiated it like they were a fool who screwed over the American people, forgetting that he was the person who negotiated it. So if you're the Canadians, how do you rationalize that? How do you rationalize you negotiate a deal with him after you've made a previous deal with the United States, but you're fine, okay, we'll renegotiate again. You do it, you give him slightly better terms to placate him. He seems happy, waves around the paper, then comes around again and says the terms that he negotiated were stupid. Whoever negotiated was stupid, him apparently, but that's not in fine print. And now we need to do something else. At what point is the credibility just smashed? Well, the Canadians have said, now. My goodness, man. What an age to live on. And what's with grassroots hegemon deciding to be the backer of my channel? I don't even, the backer of my channel is not accurate. The financier,